The first thing we have to know about stigma is what is stigma itself. Stigma is made up of three interlinked constructs. The first is experiential. This is the overt or blatant discrimination that a stigmatized person faces. The second is perceived. This is the way the stigmatized person believes that the public perceives them. And lastly is internalized. Internalized stigma is a further evolution of the other two. This is when the individual begins to believe and internalize the negative view that society holds. This has a detrimental effect on the mental and physical health of the individual and leads to things such as depression, anxiety, and even poorer sleep. The underlying theme of stigma here is that it's perpetuated by poor social support and in turn leads to a further loss of social support. This is extremely damaging as social isolation is one of the worst things a person can experience. This is evident historically as punishments like banishment and solitary confinement are some of the worst that a person can experience.
The next question that is important to ask is, what are our personal values and beliefs around stigma?
My personal beliefs around mental health and stigma are somewhat split. On one side, there are illnesses that seem more acceptable, like anxiety, depression, OCD, and ADHD. But on the other side, there are those disorders that seem more unacceptable. These are like schizophrenia, bipolar, and antisocial disorder.
Being in this field and in this world today, mental illness has become a topic people are no longer afraid to talk about, which I think is a must for everyone. Having never experienced it myself, I did not know what mental illness even was until high school started, and that's when the discussions really began. When I began talking with friends about what it was, I began really learning about mental illness. I believe that I am not necessarily in a place where I have specific attitudes related to mental illness, other than the fact that it is something people should be freely open to discuss and take seriously.
My attitudes and judgments about mental health come from personal experiences with myself and others. I never took mental health education in high school as seriously. This is because I never thought mental health was important. Many people that I know choose not to address their own mental health issues and to let them ride their wave because they're afraid of the words crazy, insane, and psycho.
I personally grew up in a community that does not believe in the existence of mental health or has a very vague understanding about it. So for the longest time, I thought concepts of mental health only include perspectives on mental illness. One is crazy or one is not crazy. There was no conceptual framework that includes a spectrum of health, disease, mental health, and mental illness.
Having been around and affected by mental illnesses, I find mental health to be very important and to be treated seriously. As a result, I'm fairly open when it comes to talking about mental health.
It's also important to ask, why is it important to be aware of your own attitudes and stigmas in general regarding mental health?
It's important to be aware of your own attitudes and stigmas in mental health because it can help with acknowledging what you're lacking information on. We need to encourage each other to educate ourselves on mental health for the sake of our own minds and of those we love most.
It's important to be aware just in case you're talking to someone who is affected or has someone close to them who is affected. It's also important in order to not say the wrong thing by accident or unconsciously, especially as a nurse. Being aware would also help us not miss some people's needs, resulting in less missed opportunities. For example, when drug addicts are ignored. Being aware would help me learn more, raise awareness, and possibly fix it.
Compared with major clinical risk factors, social isolation was correlated with a greater morbidity and mortality than either obesity or high blood pressure. The only clinical risk factor that social isolation was not worse than was smoking, with which it tied.
Why would it be important to reduce stigma in mental health?
Created using Powtoon.